Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Volume 1 of my historical fiction stories. It's been one heck of a journey making this for you, and a lot of fun. In preparing these semi-scary stories, people have asked me why am I doing this? And the answer is simple, because my wife and kids thought it'd be a good idea. First and foremost, I'm a complete and utter family man who cannot think of anything better than spending time with my wife and kids. The reason that's important is I have 3 young children who I put to bed every night, and I tell them ghost stories that have a little historical background combined with fictional tales. They really seem to love them and typically yell, another one, Daddy, once I've finished. For those that have no idea who I am, I've been a trial lawyer for most of my adult life in Chicago and have tried over 100 jury trials. One of the most frustrating times in a lawyer's life is waiting for the juries to deliberate. So I found it helpful, while waiting, to sketch out the stories for my kids in a trial notebook and narrate them once I got home. The other day we found a bunch of the stories I wrote, and my wife thought it'd be a good idea to put them on YouTube for others to enjoy. If you enjoy them, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll continue to put out good content. If you don't like them, let me know that too, so I can get better at doing this. But please be respectful. So we're going to begin in a minute, but first I have to put in a commercial for my law office that's sponsoring the channel. Thank you to the law offices of Sam Adam Jr. for their sponsorship. It's only a 30-second commercial, and right after that, the stories begin. Hope you enjoy.
My dad is, a great father, and he is a great lawyer.
There's nothing more important to me than my family. When I look at a person who comes in and I see that they have children, they have a family, I gotta fight for them like I'd fight for my own. Because I know there's a child right now that may not end up with a father. And who's gonna make sure they're protected? And these are the people I wanna help. These are the people I'm here for. We wanna make sure that this system works for you the way that it does for everybody else.
My dad is a great dad. And he makes good pies.
Every state is proud of their universities. All across the country, school spirit flowers every Saturday in the fall, as football teams take to the field and students flock to the games. Over a century has passed since the beginning of the college rivalries that spurred traditions and make for heightened experiences. The University of Wisconsin has a great history of football pride combined with a stellar reputation for higher learning. Built on the shores of the 2 lakes, Monona and Mendota, in the wonderful city of Madison, UW is widely considered one of the best universities in the Midwest. Yet football and academics are far from the only highly regarded attributes of the school. Its theater program has a rich history of producing great plays, wonderful musicians, and a world-class orchestra. Union Theater, sitting at the bottom of their famous Bascom Hill, is a masterpiece of neoclassical architecture and expert workmanship. Auditorially exceptional, it is considered Wisconsin's premier forum for experiencing the theaters. Yet such a great and storied past doesn't come without its, hauntings. Erected in the late 1890s, many strange occurrences have been reported by professors and students alike. According to one legend, a young freshman in the theater club, not having been behind the stage before, found herself in the dark and windowless costume room alone. Grabbing a dress the director had been looking for, she tried to return and open the door from where she came, and found it had locked by itself. Banging on the door, no one was around to hear her. Panicking, she kicked the door, trying to make enough sound for someone to come help. No one did. Setting the dress down on the floor next to her so she could bang with all her strength, she pounded on the door with both hands. Suddenly, the doorknob turned and the door opened. Standing in the hallway was the director, demanding she give him the dress. Bending down to pick it up, she realized it was no longer there. Turning around, the dress was rehanging on the rack. Now, ghost playing tricks on unsuspecting freshmen is one thing. A spirit spooking an entire audience is quite another. In 1950, UW was presenting an award-winning Philharmonic in the Union Theater for 3 shows over a long weekend. Tickets were sold out for the performance within 2 days of the production. On the first night, the theater was packed. Standing room only was all that was available as the musicians took the stage. In the orchestra was a single flutist who was featured in 2 of the pieces played during the program. In the middle of the second piece, the flute player had a massive heart attack and died on stage in his chair, sitting upright. No one on stage realized he had died, and no one in the audience knew either, until intermission, when he slumped over and fell onto the ground. Canceling the rest of the performance, the conductor informed the audience of what happened, but asked everyone to stay for one last piece, the flutist's favorite. The entire orchestra played the song Absent the Flute. So moved by the experience, many of those in attendance requested a recording of the piece. The conductor assented and went into the studio to make several recordings. Upon replaying the salute of their fallen comrade, a flute could be heard playing on stage during the performance. Sarasota, Florida. A beautiful small town of about 50,000 residents sitting right on the Gulf of Mexico, about 50 miles south of Tampa Bay. Its first mayor, Hamilton Gillespie, saw the potential in the sleepy hamlet and gave the town its motto, "May Sarasota prosper." Oh, and prosper it has. Wealth and privilege abound in this growing metropolis by the bay. Rolls-Royce, Lamborghini, Mercedes are names frequently seen parked along the main strip of downtown bars and restaurants. The best of the best is the lone standard applied to everything. Mega yachts and mansions line the small island defining the city's affluence. St. Armand's Circle, with its posh boutiques and trendy eateries, welcome the rich and powerful during the cold winters up north. Sarasota brings in the class. The sunshine keeps them there. Yet not all things are always as they seem. Glorious days can lead to scary nights, where the living cross paths with the, well, not so alive. The high-flying 1920s brought with it death and destruction in the form of the old Ritz-Carlton on Longboat Key. You see, John Ringling, of the famous Ringling Brothers, lived in a Romanesque-style villa in Sarasota and brought his entire circus to his campus in the heart of this formidable property. Hundreds of carnies, circus folks, and animals practiced their trade right next to the ocean waters. Yet John Ringling saw more in Sarasota than just a quiet town for his lifestyle. He had big dreams, a resort town where people from New York, Jersey, could come and live in a lavish style. So he decided to make his dream a reality and began to build a massive Ritz-Carlton hotel on the south end of Longboat Key. 200 rooms, yacht docking facilities, and a train stop in the Lobby Hotel for travelers who wanted to come directly into luxury. Nothing was left out of the plans. Every luxury there for them to enjoy. But like many projects around the country in the late 1920s, money began to run short. Circuses were not in demand, and though $650,000 had already been spent, and one of the 3 wings of the hotel had been fully constructed, All activity stopped on November 26, 1926. The building was abandoned. Windows left paneless, porticos left doorless, wonderfully decorated hallways left deteriorating from the Florida heat. It was a massive castle of decay to the locals, except for the children. Children always find a way to get into an attractive nuisance, and the kiddies of Sarasota loved the dying Ritz. Children of all ages climbed through the project, teetering on windowsills, playing on the 5th and 6th floors, looking out into the Gulf of Mexico from open doorways that dropped 70 feet to the ground. It was an accident just waiting to happen. At least 8 people had fallen from the heights and were killed horrifically on the beach-laden property. Legends spoke of one high school student who was showing off for his girlfriend by walking on the roof and slipped and fell, breaking his neck on the rocks below. Travelers passing by at night claim they have seen the ghost of a young man dressed in a school uniform walking through the area. Another apparition of a young lady has been witnessed by passengers cruising by on boats late at night, her long gown blowing in the wind as she walks on the beach, only to disappear as they drew nearer. Authorities have erected a fence around the property to keep people out so they don't get hurt. But people living on the island think it was really built to keep the walking dead from leaving. Small-town America was its most magnificent in the first decade of the 20th century. The country was now stretched from one coast to the other by a transcontinental railroad. The economy was burgeoning as the end of the Civil War brought with it an industrial revolution like none before, and Midwest corn entered onto the world stage, feeding the entire Western Hemisphere. By the beginning of 1912, villages, hamlets, settlements all across Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas grew strong upon the backbone of mass agricultural production. Family farms and rural communities raised an entire generation on innocent ideals and unsophisticated concepts. Love thy neighbor was a familiar refrain as children skipped off to school, front doors remained unlocked, and local fairs were had every Saturday night in the town square. Oh, what a time to be alive. Well, at least for most. Some, however, found such simple living not really living at all. Evil pursuits were more to their taste. Stephen Moffat was one of those people. He made good bad and bad worse. Raising a family or keeping an honest job wasn't his cup of tea. Less mundane activities were more his style. Robbing the occasional bank or kidnapping for ransom, Stevens loved the wilder side of small-town life. The tiny police forces that came with them was all the better. Federal law enforcement was non-existent at the turn of the century, with many local towns provided with a single sheriff. Stevens Moffat used that to his advantage, and running from state to state to skip out on jurisdiction was his forte. At least, until he graduated from financial crimes to cold-blooded murder, and how quickly he attained a PhD in death. Sally Ward was the daughter of a wealthy banker in western Iowa. The local papers across the state announced her engagement and wedding to Patrick Reed, a young executive in Mr. Ward's Sioux City branch. June 17, 1912 was listed as the wedding date in the newspaper folded under Stephen Moffat's arm. Knowing that the reception for the wedding would be filled with cash gifts from all of the rich friends of the bride's family, Stevens figured it would be easy. Walk in, rob the party, and get out to Nebraska before the authorities could catch him. That was the idea, at least. But we wouldn't be telling this tale if it had been that easy. The reception hall was massive. Marble and gold were abound everywhere. An orchestra played classical music from the stage. Dozens of servants provided the guests with their every conceivable desire. 300 people dressed in the finest of tuxedos and the most expensive of gowns as they danced and drank well into the night. But fine dining wasn't what Stevens had been there for. Pretending to be a footman for one of the businessmen in attendance, he watched from the foyer. Hours passed, and he watched until finally the clock struck midnight and the guests began to come together. A line of wealthy businessmen formed to congratulate the bride and groom, handing them fat envelopes stuffed with cash, who in turn placed them in a white satin sack. Overflowing from the generosity, a servant took the bag to an anteroom and held it there for the happy couple behind a locked door. Stevens immediately went into action. Walking over to the door, he kicked it in to surprise the waiter and grab the bag. But what Stevens didn't know was that Mr. Ward had a surprise of his own. He had hired 5 Pinkerton detectives to provide security at the party and watch over the cash. When Stevens broke into the room to grab the money, he was met by the large force of men. Taking out his 2 pistols, he shot and killed every man in the room and wounded 3 more on his way out the door. $75,000 in cash was stolen in total, nearly $2 million in today's dollars. Running out of the front door, Stevens broke into a huge smile and laughed hideously as he realized he had made it, which technically was true. He had made it to his Model T Ford parked on the south end of the driveway, but that's as far as he made it. See, perched on the roof of the convention hall was Gary T. Buford, a sharpshooter from the 7th Regiment of the United States Army. He had become a Pinkerton rifleman after serving his government. Aiming for the back of Stevens' head, he fired a single shot. And as the bag of bills emptied onto the ground at the rear of his car, Stevens' smile disappeared into death's grin. For his heart had stopped beating, before his body even hit the ground.
A lot of people think, oh, you only do celebrity clients or high-profile clients, which is not true. I want to be here for the little guy. I want to be here for those who can't fight for themselves. I want to make sure that we take on the government or we take on the insurance companies, and we do it together. People truly don't think they have a chance, that who's going to fight with them? Well, that's what I want to change. Then when they come to the law offices of Sam Adam, we can rise up and fight together. Whether you're connected or not, this system's supposed to work for all of us.
December 25th is one of the happiest times of the year. Celebrations, parties, gift giving, and praying for good cheer can be found on most everyone's front door. Snow-covered streets find people walking with a little more pep. Smells of cinnamon, sugar, and spice filter through the brightened doors of holiday-decorated shops and eateries. Cheer and good tidings show large in the smiles greeting pedestrians of all kinds. Yet as with all things, there's an exception to every rule. St. Martha's Catholic Church and School take the meaning of holiday spirit literally. For on that day, that Christmas Day, spirits of all kinds can be found haunting the American cathedral. The church itself is a grand old stone and brick building erected in 1867, right after the Civil War. Pastor Josiah Jackson commissioned its construction and raised more than $40,000 to build it. And he had grand plans for the layout, with one particular demand for the planners. It had to have a bell tower with a marble circular staircase. He insisted that the stairs be paid for by himself, which he happily did. In 1870, the church was completed, and the bell tower was the highest man-made point for hundreds of miles. Every morning at dawn, Pastor Jackson and his wife could be seen stepping onto the tower platform and ringing in the beginning of a new day. That was until December 25th, 1874. Christmas morning. On that day, Minister Fanning, the underpastor, had awoken late. He hadn't heard the morning bell that usually woke him up. Not knowing what was happening, he lit a candle and searched the church for either pastor or his wife. And finding neither, he figured he better climb the stairs and ring the bells for the town. As he got to the base of the steps, he saw reddish drops of liquid going up. His heart began beating faster as the drops of blood grew in number. Reaching the midpoint of the stairs, he found pools of blood dripping from one step to the next. Coming around the last part of the circular staircase, right before the platform of the tower, he saw it. Pastor Jackson was hanging from the bell tower rope by his neck. His face was twisted in an awful grimace. He was hanged to death. Reaching over to bring him in, Minister Fanning looked down into the bell hollow and saw her. Pastor Wife's head had been cut off and was lying 75 feet below next to her battered body. Now, no one ever knew what happened. An investigation led nowhere. No one was ever brought to justice. Yet that was not the last time Pastor or his wife had been seen in that tower. Locals say that every morning on Christmas Day, right at dawn, a headless woman can be seen through the church's windows, carrying a candle. And if you look really closely, you can see her walking around her husband's steps, up onto the platform, and throw herself off into the bell hollow. And if you're in the right spot, standing just at the base of the tower, on December 25th, you can see a rope wrapped around the neck of a man dressed in black, hanging from the bell. Love. How glorious a thing it is to be in love. Unless, of course, it isn't. For Jonathan Rugby, love was eternal, fulfilling, and devastating. And he would search for his long-lost paramour, Claudia, forever. Rugby, an American by birth, made his fortune in London at the turn of the 20th century. A grand and international city by 1900, it had developed into a dichotomy of culture. Only two sides of the same coin persisted. One rich, one poor, no middle. For the poor and destitute, London was a grimy, crime-laden metropolis of unsafe factories, growing prostitution, and unsanitary conditions. Infantile death was a major problem, as 1 in 5 children died in their first and only year of life. Extreme poverty proliferated as people flocked to the city looking for work and housing. By 1910, more than 1 million people lived in rat-infested slums and overcrowded ghettos. But the city catered to the ultra-wealthy as well. The robber barons of the Gilded Age. Magnificent mansions, decadent carriages, and opulent architecture lined the wide boulevards as industrial magnates and corpulent bankers strode to and fro. Rugby had found a home amongst the fat cats. A structural engineer by trade, he developed and patented a method for building archways beneath the ground. For a city of millions that needed transportation, his inventions became essential and netted him millions. Between 1905 and 1910, London constructed 3 major subway lines. The Underground Electric Railways Company of London bought Rugby's patents and provided him a life of riches. Owning a large apartment overlooking Mayfair Park in London's most wealthy neighborhood, Rugby lived well. Luxury by day, theater by night. By the age of 32, he was content, being considered one of Great Britain's most eligible. That was until 1913, when he saw La Maritana at the Royal Opera House and the young Spanish vocal star, Claudio Manolo. The thunderbolt struck, and Rugby could think of no one else. The two of them talked well into the night after the production, and within hours of their meeting, he proposed marriage. His heart filled with a passion he had never known. She saw in him the object of everything she had desired. Love was glorious until it wasn't. Hearing of the proposal, Claudia's father rushed from Madrid to London to stop the wedding. Reaching her hotel room, her father confronted her about the engagement. Claudia was just 15 years old, and he forbade her from marrying a 32-year-old man she barely knew. Devastated, Claudia screamed at her father, telling him that he would forever regret denying her love, and threw herself over the balcony and into the street 6 stories below. Coming to see his love and whisper away to Paris for their wedding, Rugby was walking on the street next to her hotel as he saw her body strike the ground 10 feet away. His heart ached as he watched the light in her eyes forever fade into blackness. He would never love again.
So many people have been kind to me, even though I've represented people that they hate, people that they can't stand. They'll come up to me and tell me they appreciate what I do. I don't care if you're the mayor of Chicago or if you're a janitor, we're gonna have somebody fighting for you. When I look at a person who comes in and I see that they have children, I gotta fight for them like I'd fight for my own. Those who can't speak for themselves, those who every day of their lives they're told, you're not good enough. I wanna get those people to understand I'm here for them. Your family is my family, and that's what I really stand for.